Hey everyone, welcome to an Insomniac's Insight. This is my very first episode. It's been a long time coming now. Well, at least for me, I've been wanting to put this out for quite a while now, but unfortunately, things happened that didn't allow me to get this episode out as soon as I wanted to. I got a little bit more work than I expected, and a little bit more schoolwork than I expected, and it kind of threw things off here and there, unfortunately, and that's just something I wasn't able to control. Um, and then on top of that, the other day when I originally recorded this episode, and I tried to edit out some noises that kind of disturbed me when I was recording, it unfortunately distorted the audio a bit, and I have to now re-record it. I'm not actually recording at my house, which is where I usually record it, and I just have annoying noises from there, which are like my fish tank or my air conditioner or my dogs. I'm actually recording away from home at the moment, so the audio again is going to sound a bit different, but I decided to go ahead and do it anyway. I've been really wanting to get a new episode out, and I feel like I can't wait any longer, if I'm being honest. So, I wanted to go ahead and just talk about a topic that was actually requested to me a while back now. It was what do I think is the scariest hotels, anywhere in the world, and if I had a choice, which one would I like to stay at? And this is something that is honestly very interesting to me. I've learned a lot about a whole bunch of different scary places, hotels in general, and of course, like hospitals, asylums, things of that nature. And I've never actually considered staying at one, just more or less just kind of going to check them out, take a ghost tour if they offer it, or see what I can make of it when I get there. But never actually, if I was given the chance to stay at it for at least a night or two, what would I do, or which one would I like to go to? Because there's so many out there. I feel like nowadays there are so many hotels that at least claim to be haunted, but there's very few that are actually backed up or have had a long running in the quote unquote haunted hotel community, if there is one, which I'm sure there is, because honestly, there's something for everything out there. But there's a few that I have actually looked into, and I have actually thought about being considered some of the most haunted hotels that are out there. One of the more famous ones that I guess caught a lot of traction a while back was the Cecil Hotel. I know that's the one where the whole Elisa Lam incident occurred, and then it came to light that a whole bunch of infamous serial killers had stayed there, such as like Jeffrey Dahmer and Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. So I know that's why that one has a lot of following to it, because of the whole infamy surrounding it. And that one's pretty interesting, but I never considered staying there. Um, Another very prominent hotel is actually not in the United States, it's actually overseas. It's the Osaka Weekly Mansion in Tokyo, Japan. Um, I've always thought that the horror spectrum in Japan is far, far, far differently perceived than ours. Their spirits are a lot more. How would you say? They have a very dark and lingering presence, if you'd say. You think about their movies like The Grudge and stuff like that, and that's what their spirits are like. They don't really humanize them. They're very dehumanized, and given this sort of persona that follows you and in a way mentally messes with you. So I've always thought that's pretty interesting. I know one of the main points of the Osaka Weekly is that they are famous for a faceless ghost, and I know that became a big thing after the whole Slenderman era. But this actually happened way before that. That there was this belief that there was a faceless woman ghost who periodically haunted the hotel, and that from far away you would notice her in her white clothing, and you'd approach her and immediately see that she has no face, but she'd be speaking to you in an unrecognizable language. Even according to the Japanese, it's not even Japanese. So that was pretty interesting to have a Japanese ghost that doesn't even speak Japanese. It would probably freak you out. Even if you didn't speak Japanese, that'd probably still freak you out. Um, there are also a lot of occasions where throughout the hotel you see a lot of white mist, a lot of little clouds of mist floating or lingering throughout the halls. And then there's been a lot of reports where people say that they feel like hands, small hands of either children or women, touching them when they sleep. And that's something that's kind of interesting to me because a lot of ghosts love to mess with you when you're awake, but to mess with you when you're at your most vulnerable state in such a very provoking manner is interesting. Why would they choose to mess with you while you're sleeping? And again, in such a very non-provoking manner where it's something so light that you'll notice, but it might not give you a big shock at first. Moving on, I guess another big hotel would be probably the Roosevelt Hotel that's in Hollywood. I feel like the only main point of that hotel, not the main point, but the biggest um, attraction of that hotel would probably be the fact that it's believed to be haunted by Marilyn Monroe's ghost. I thought that was pretty interesting. We hear a lot about famous male ghosts, but not a lot of famous female ghosts, especially for those of actors. I mean, one of the other big mainstays of Hollywood is the Hollywood sign that's haunted by a female actor or actress. But to be haunted by a female actress in a hotel, nonetheless Marilyn Monroe, is quite interesting. Um, I never would have guessed that her ghost would even be lingering around. Sometimes when you think of ghosts, we don't typically think of famous people. We think of just random spirits and people. Um, so I thought that was pretty interesting when I stumbled upon that fact. Another one that's not here, or at least locally, is the Langham Hotel in London. It's actually one of the oldest ones, or one of the older ones that I believe is on the list of the ones that I kind of compiled together. It was made in 1865. It's been visited by a lot of famous, renowned poets and writers and people throughout the entirety of its existence, such as people like Mark Twain and Oscar Wilde. Um, those are just some of the famous people who have been there, and I thought that was really interesting to go to a place where Mark Twain himself was at. That's actually something I didn't even know would be possible, but it actually is. Um, One of their more famous ghosts, there's actually two of them that I kept hearing a lot about or reading a lot about when I was looking up some info for this video, or podcast rather, is that one of them is a older man who is in Victorian era clothing, I believe. Um, they say that he haunts periodically in the room 300s, anywhere from those types of floors. But his most famous one is obviously going to be 333. Um, and the funny thing about this is that for some reason his ghost is almost always only seen during October. Um, there's no explanation as to why. Some people either believe that that's his his death date. It was in October, or maybe his birth year, or something along the lines of that. And then, of course, there's the people who believe that it's connected to something along the lines of Halloween and the veil being lifted during the month of October, which is pretty cool. Whichever explanation it may be, it's actually very interesting as to why this ghost would only pick October. Um, and that's just to say, if he even has a choice to when he picks it, it could just be something that's residual, something that just overplays itself because of something important that happened. And um, I think that's pretty interesting. Another ghost who's there is believed to be a German prince or German soldier who actually committed suicide because he was afraid of being drafted into the First World War. Um, this one I thought was very, very interesting because of the fact that it's something that people don't consider a lot. Is that back when the World Wars began, or any war before modern era began, there was a lot of people being drafted in when they had no say, and because of that, a lot of people committed suicide because they were afraid of going to war in the first place. And for that to have such a big impact on somebody that they feel the need to commit suicide is very, very saddening, very heartbreaking, and it was the reality of those times. It's just something that we kind of forget about now that things have changed and you have the choice to join the military. But back then, and even now in some countries, other than the U.S., we don't have a choice whether we're drafted into the military or not. So I thought that was something that was very unique out of all the hotels that I looked up on the list. Um, it's very, very strong to know that the reason for that person's haunting is due to something of their own doing. That's the reason why they're there. It's them replaying that moment over and over again. And getting into my last two would be the Queen Mary, which is actually a ship that was converted into a hotel. It sits off the coast, and it was used during war times, multiple times, from what I was able to compile. And one of the sets of more famous ghosts is a believed young ship hand who was working in the depths of the ship, and there was an emergency that occurred and caused him and a few others to have to rush from the bottom of the ship to get to the top. And as they were doing so, he was trampled and crushed by one of the steel doors that were on the bottom. Um, that was very odd to me, I guess you could say. I know it's not something that is unlikely to happen. Of course, it probably did happen multiple times, But that this is a ghost that haunts the ship. He's a young boy. They say around anywhere from 17 to 19 years old. Who, when you see him while taking the ghost tour, because this place actually does offer ghost tours and accepts the fact that it is haunted as a hotel, is one of the ghosts that is seen predominantly. Some people have claimed to have seen him either fully, like in his full body, as a full body apparition, and some people seem to see him where it's believed that he was cut in half by the steel door where it was closed off. So you'll see either his lower half or his upper half wandering throughout the bottom half of the ship, asking for help and crying aloud. And I thought that was something that was very, very sad, but also very interesting. He's just running a regular routine, and then one day he gets crushed to death by a steel door, something that he's probably had to open and close every single day up until that one day where it just doesn't work because everybody panicked. And another ghost, or actually it's not ghost, it's more of a believed to be residual haunting of multiple apparitions, would be in the pool area that they have on the Queen Mary. There's actually believed sightings of multiple female ghosts that are just enjoying the swimming pool. They say it's something that's so bizarre, something that I've obviously never heard of, where these ghosts just honestly just love to enjoy the swimming pool. They say it's about 4 to 5 women, and it happens randomly at night where they'll just appear in their era type clothing, and they'll just be sitting there enjoying the swimming pool. You could walk past them and you'd never notice them, other than the fact that they may look out of place because of their clothing or the way that they speak. And other than that, you'd never know that they were not meant to be there. Some people say that they'll go there and they'll think that the pool is occupied by 4 or 5 people, and they'll just join in and either lay in the pool or lay by the side of the pool, and then next hour or so those people are just randomly gone. Those women have disappeared. And that's something that would be kind of odd to experience. You expect to be there, people yelling, laughing, having a good time, and then all of a sudden it's just silence, pure and utter silence. So I feel like the Queen Mary would be a very interesting place to meet. It's something that's a little different too. Most of these places on the list are actually actual hotels. They're buildings, but this one is actually a warship that was converted into a hotel once it was docked and never used again. And that's pretty cool. And my final one is the Stanley Hotel. Now, this one is not one of the more notorious. It's not one of the scariest. It's not one of the more aggressive spirit oriented hotels. Actually, it's just one of the most quiet hotels, one of the most lonely hotels that I could find. This is for a good reason. This is actually one of my favorite hotels for a few different reasons, but the main reason is because of the fact that it was actually the inspiration for Stephen King's novel of The Shining. I thought this was very interesting. Him and his wife actually stayed there and had a lot of paranormal experiences from what he accounts, and I've always thought that was pretty interesting. Stephen King is one of my favorite horror writers. He's a very good novelist, and I've always been inspired by him when I decided to write back in middle school. And I've always taken an interest into The Shining as a story because of where it's set and how it's written. It's more of the slow burn of a psychotic break as opposed to just a jump scare or a typical ghost, messing with you and your family. It's something that a lot of people don't consider of how being alone can drive a person insane, you know, or it's very, very mental, very psychotic break in the way that it's written. Even if you watch the movie, it's a very good adaptation of that. Um, so then the hotel on top of that is even more intriguing to me because of where it's located, how secluded it is, and the fact that when it snows, it gets completely covered um, to the point where if you're there, you're stuck there. And it's very outlandish as to where it's located. It's away from civilization, it's away from people, and I always wondered what it'd be like to stay there. Um, Stephen King accounts where him and his wife were like the only ones there when they stayed at the hotel, and it was very eerie. You could hear your footsteps linger throughout the hallways, many doors down, and you could you could literally hear everything, and sometimes you could hear nothing. Like him and his wife would be on the opposite ends of the hotel and would not even know each other were there. Um, you can completely feel alone in a hotel so massive and so quiet and so secluded that I find that really amazing. Really, I guess you could say eerie is the best word for it. I'd really want to be in a hotel that's predominantly eerie, that just gives you a sense of dread, it gives you a sense of being alone, as opposed to being exposed to something that's extremely haunted. Um, not that there's anything wrong with it, but I feel that the hotel where the only thing that's messing with you is your own mind is actually a lot more scary than actually being haunted by a spirit. I know people may disagree with that, but I feel like your mind is typically your worst enemy. Um, Now, that's not to say that the hotel doesn't have its fair share of ghosts. The owner, the former owner actually, is said to be one of the ones who roams throughout the halls. Stephen King accounted where he's seen children walking up and down the halls, which is, the inspiration for the two twins that are in The Shining. And then, of course, he said that he had an incident where he believed that him and his wife had left their room for a few moments with their bags fully packed and that nobody was there, but he heard a bellhop and he heard the bellhop asking them questions as they walked down the hallway, and he had already entered their room. And it was for literally no more than a few moments that they were away from their room down the hall. And as soon as they run back to the room to tell the bellhop that they didn't need anything, all of their suitcases that they had brought, all their clothes were unpacked, folded nicely, and put into the drawers that are used to accommodate the guest. And that was pretty interesting to me. I mean, that's kind of funny to have a polite ghost, performing his duty as a bellhop. So I think that that's pretty interesting because of the fact that it's something you might not expect. You expect ghosts to be more aggressive, more violent, more malignant, more, I don't know, more on the side of wanting to bother you as opposed to helping you. So I guess that brings me to the answer to my question is which one would I actually want to stay at? I'd want to stay at the Stanley Hotel. I feel like it's in a place that is very, very secluded and is something that I'd really like. If I was to go to another one, say like the Queen Mary, it's very tourist oriented. It gets a lot of attention, so I feel like I'd never be able to fully enjoy it. Same thing with probably like the Roosevelt. It's in the middle of Hollywood, and the Langham is very known in London, so it's got a lot of following as well. Other than that, maybe like the Cecil, but I'm pretty sure that one has a lot of following now because of everything that's happening in the Sakla Weekly. I think it'd be very interesting, but I'm not sure it's something that sits my cup of tea. I kind of want to do something that's more along the lines of the Stanley Hotel. I've always found that one to be one of my favorite haunted hotels. I've looked at it extensively for years as to that be a place that I'd want to visit. just to visit, but to have the chance to stay there, I think that'd be something that would be a very memorable experience. Especially if I was to have an experience there, I'd really, really enjoy that. Um, but other than that, I had a good time compiling this list together. I learned a little bit more about a couple hotels that I had originally thought of, and that some of the things that I've heard were disproven. So that was something new to learn. And then I learned a little bit more about hotels that I had never heard of before, such as the Osaka Weekly. I didn't know that one was that big in Tokyo. I mean, I'd heard of it before, on random lists and videos, and kind of wrote it off. But to hear that it's something that's very predominant in Tokyo and considered one of its most haunted was pretty interesting to me. So I like the fact that I got to do a bit of research and figure out more options as to what's out there. I feel like there's no shortage of haunted hotels or haunted places. So I feel like every time if I was to do this, look up for other things such as hospitals or schools or any kind of places that may be haunted, I might find something that I had never known before. And that's always something I like to do. But yeah, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and bring this episode to a close. It ran a little bit longer than I expected it to be honest. But I guess it's a good thing. I really like talking. I really like letting my thoughts flow. And I know I kind of ramble on a bit, but I guess that's the whole point of this, right? So, but yeah, like I said, the Stanley Hotel is the hotel that really captivates me. And if you guys have any questions or any suggestions, feel free to comment it on the podcast. Let me know what you guys want to hear. What kind of topics you guys would want to hear next. I have a couple ideas for things that I'd want to talk about. Maybe my next episode, I'm kind of considering talking about my personal experiences as to why I believe in ghosts, and maybe some of the experiences that I've had happen to me, especially some of my more recent ones. But other than that, if you guys have any suggestions, go ahead and feel free to leave it down on the comments part of this podcast. And I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.